And
Oh, let me do one more introduction, Paul, then
okay.
I'll get to you.
Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm Trudy Murata, volunteer community ambassador with the AARP here in Northern Virginia. From our earliest beginnings, AARP has championed lifelong learning. That's why AARP Virginia is thrilled to bring you our 5th year of Tuesday Explorers, a lifelong learning program offered every Tuesday, January through May at 3 o'clock East Coast time for our curious explorers. AARP has always been a wise friend and fierce defender in your corner. AARP is helping people who are 50 plus in their families feel confident, in control, and secure as they age. And as this wise friend in your corner, AARP helps you protect yourself and your loved ones from fraud, get healthy, stay healthy, care for loved ones, make connections, plan a trip, learn new technologies, attend a class, and have fun, like what we do with our Tuesday Explorer program. Today, we are delighted to have with us Paul Greenwood. Paul is a retired San Diego Deputy District Attorney, where he headed up the Elder Abuse Prosecution Unit for 22 years. He has prosecuted over 750 felony cases of physical, sexual, emotional, and financial elder abuse. Paul now spends much of his post-retirement time consulting on elder abuse cases and providing training to law enforcement and adult protective services agencies across the country and internationally. He is also a part of AARP's Fraud Watch Network as an ambassador and an advisor. We have Mary Ellen Strange joining us today. Paul, I'm going to turn the program over to you and let you introduce Mary Ellen.
Well, thank you so much, Trudy, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. You know, one of the lessons I learned as a fraud prosecutor over the many years is that the reason that so many fraudsters are able to conduct their crimes is because too many victims stay silent and don't report. And it's very rare for a victim to be bold enough to come forward and share their story. But there's so many lessons that we can learn from a victim's story, and no matter how painful it sounds. And I'm just so thankful that we have with us today Mary Ellen Strange from Indiana. Now, until a few minutes ago, Mary Ellen and I had never met and never talked. Is that correct, Mary Ellen?
That's right.
Okay, so this is going to be a kind of a fresh conversation that we're going to have, and I will at various times interrupt, is I suppose is the word, but just by ask questions because that's my prosecutorial nature. So, but I'm going to let Mary Ellen tell her story. So, why don't you begin just by putting it into context? Where are you from, Mary Ellen? What was your career in? And then we'll start from there.
I'm from New Albany, Indiana. I moved back to my hometown about 6 years ago, from the East Coast all up and down to Florida. I'm a former nurse and consultant in IT, healthcare information technology, with KPMG Pete Marwick, and worked with the electronic record, the greatest part of my career, the electronic health record.
So you mixed medical nursing background with technology, did you?
Yes, and it was the best move I could have made because I got in on the ground floor of the electronic health record. In fact, I was consulting in it before they really had one that existed at the time. So,
where did you learn your technological background from?
At the hospital in Louisville, where I had worked for 10 years, we installed a computer system, the first clinical system, and they were looking for someone with a clinical background. And I had just finished an MBA and was looking for a way to combine nursing and business. And it was just the perfect opportunity for me that popped up at the hospital where I was working. So I kind of learned it on the job. And it was the best move I ever made career-wise.
Wow. Fascinating, fascinating. So
Thanks.
take us now to June of last year,
Yeah.
and let's begin with, is it a call you got?
Yes, I had a pandemonium at my house at the time. I typically don't answer calls that I don't recognize, but Stanley Steamer was cleaning my carpets and my dog was chasing their machine and the workers and barking up a storm when I felt my phone buzz in my pocket. And without even thinking, I picked it up and answered. And they it was a woman who identified herself by name and employee ID number and said she was with Amazon Fraud Detection Unit and asked if I had purchased a MacBook Pro and some other Apple accessories and shipped them to New York. And I said, no, I haven't done that. And she said, well, that's why our unit's looking at it, because we know you haven't shipped anything to New York before. And so we've been looking, and she said, they believed I had been detected, whatever, in the dark market, whatever. And she said they had investigated and found that there was an affidavit issued at the U.S. border, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, that someone had attempted in my name to smuggle $94,000 in cash over the border, and they had seized that. And she went on to tell me I had 18 false bank accounts, 9 fake driver's licenses, and there were some questions about drug trafficking and money laundering. And I said, well, that wasn't me at all. And actually, I said, this is crazy. And I hung up on her. I said, I don't have time for this right now. So I hung up on her. And about 4 hours later, when things calmed down, I actually wasn't worried about all of the ridiculous charges. I was more worried about somebody shopping on Amazon and spending my money buying computers. And I thought I'd better check into that. So I actually went online and Googled a new number for Amazon Fraud Detection Unit. I did not call her back on her number. And a gentleman answered.
Let me just stop you there. When
Okay.
you Google that number,
Yeah.
you just typed into the Google search engine,
Yes.
Amazon fraud unit telephone number?
I didn't even ask. I don't think I asked telephone number. I don't recall.
Okay.
I think I probably just put in Amazon Fraud Detection Unit.
Okay. And when we type in names like that on a search, it obviously pops up. Did you click on the first one, on the top one?
A number came up. I don't even recall that I got a link to a web page. I don't recall. And since then, I've learned that you cannot trust numbers for customer service that you Google on the internet. I know that there was an article in the Washington Post on August 20th that the head of the article in their technology column was, do not trust Google search for customer service numbers. It might be a scam. And I think that was exactly what happened to me, because I was fed a number, didn't think about it, just proceeded to call it, and they answered. Amazon fraud.
So in fact, you were calling a fake Amazon phone number. Okay.
Yeah.
So tell us who answered the phone when you called it?
Well, this time it was a Will Watson. He gave me his employee ID number and he repeated all the same information and questions. And that got my attention because I thought, this guy's telling me the exact same thing the first caller did. And I think he even added on to it. I know he put in child pornography, questions of child pornography, and asked me all the same questions. And again, I denied everything. I said, that's not me. I didn't do any of it. And he said, well, these are some serious federal crimes. I need to refer you to another department. So he did. And the gentleman that answered the phone then said, I'm Officer Felix Edwards. I'm with the FTC. My employee ID number is such and such.
When he, Mary Ellen, when he referred you to this other gentleman, was that a separate phone call that then came into your phone, or was
No.
he already on the line?
He transferred me on, so
Okay.
he was already on the line.
Okay.
So Officer Edwards asked me all the same questions, and he said, well, he said, I know you contacted us, and I know that I believe you. He said, your information is available on the dark web. You've been scammed. Your identity has been stolen. And so he said, these are serious federal crimes. You have two options. Your first option is to go public with your case, in which case we'll need to move forward with an arrest warrant. And you will need to hire an attorney and fight your case through the courts. We will have to lock down your accounts because your name has been associated with money laundering. And I couldn't imagine, hire your own attorney. And I thought, well, how am I going to pay for an attorney, pay my bills, carry on living? And he said, this could take a long time, maybe up to 10 years. You never know. And I thought, well, that's not a very good option. In fact, I said to him, I said, well, that's not a very palatable option. What's my second choice? And he said, your second choice is to pursue an ADR, an alternate dispute resolution. And he says, I can help you with that. You will have to keep it 100% confidential because we trust no one. But I will help to document your case to present to the courts. It will all be kept confidential. And we will work on proving that your money is indeed yours. It wasn't obtained through money laundering. And he said, I'm here to help you. And I also said, what about that Will Watson guy? Is he real? And he said, hold on, let me check into that. And he took down the guy's name and his employee ID number. And then he came back on the line and he said, yes, he indeed is an employee of the Amazon Fraud Detection Unit. So all things seemed pretty legitimate to me at that point. And he said they wouldn't lock down my accounts if I would cooperate with the government because they want to get these guys. He said he did this every day, all day, working with people who were victims of fraud or theft, identity theft, sorry. He said, I work with people who've been through the exact same scenario that you have. And so they live through it, they get through it just fine, and I'm here to help you. So,
and Mary Ellen, one thing which is very interesting is this Officer Edwards was telling you on the one hand that you were a victim of a fraud, but on the other hand was giving you the first option that your case would have to be tried in public and they would pursue arrest warrants against you.
right.
How did that sit with you, that on one hand he's saying, yes, you're a victim, but on the other hand, you're a suspect?
I think you get in such a state of alertness and confusion, maybe a little panic. You don't really give it that much deep thought. I mean, I think if I'd given this enough deep thought all along, I would have blown the whistle somewhere along the line. But they kind of get you into a state of certainly concern. And it doesn't take long for the fear to set in.
So Officer Edwards gave you that second option that you were more comfortable in choosing. What was his plan now to go forward? What was he suggesting you do next?
Well, he said that he would need to begin documenting my money and that I would need to go to the bank and ask for the cash withdrawals. So I went to the bank and he walked me through it. And he said, now here's what they're going to say to you. They're not going to want to give you your money. And here's what you say. And he would say, you tell them you want $10,000 or $20,000. You want to remodel your bathroom, or you want to do something on your house, whatever. And I said, okay, no problem. I would like to add a bathroom to my upstairs. And, I was all ready to buy it. So I had my story ready, but he stayed on the phone. When I went to the bank, he stayed on the phone in my purse or in my pocket. He always led me to believe that we were being recorded, because he would set up times for phone calls. And I wonder now in hindsight, was he just training somebody else on the phone to fill his shoes? But
so before you would drive to the bank, you would have him on the phone, and then you would put your phone in your purse.
Or pocket.
Or pocket. Did it somewhat reassure you that he was actually on the phone with you when you were going to these to get this money out?
I don't think so, because I wouldn't talk to him. He'd say, don't let them know, don't talk to me. Don't let anybody know that, that I'm on the phone. And I forgot one thing. Back when he laid out the whole proposal that I work with him, he did say to me at the end of his investigation, I would meet with 3 gentlemen. One would be from Social Security admin, and they would give me a new Social Security card with the last 4 digits changed. I would meet with someone from the FTC who would give me an NOC letter, a no objection certificate that I should keep in a lockbox or in a safe place to take to the bank or anybody else that questioned, that cleared me of any money laundering charges. That was the no objection certificate. He would also provide me with a duplicate file of everything he had documented on my behalf to present to the courts that he would handle. And I would also receive a check from the US Treasury Department returning all of the money that he would have to document on my behalf. So that would happen at the end of the process. And early on, he had said 3 days, maybe 5 days. But now you kind of forget about the 3 to 5 day time frame after you get into it, because I spent days going from one bank branch to another, trying to collect $10,000 at each bank, all in one day. And he was giving me addresses and directions. Do you know where this is? Is that very far from where you live? I mean, I ran all over Louisville to all of the bank branches there. And they questioned. He said, they're going to warn you that this might be fraud. And here's what you say. And so that was what he talked about. You want to remodel, you want to do this, and it's your money and you have a right to it. And I did spend one whole day. And I think at the end of the day, I had collected, I think, maybe $10,000 from various bank branches.
Well, this was all in cash, was it?
Yes. Yes.
Had you ever in previous times ever withdrawn that amount of money in cash before?
No, I would say not. I mean, maybe 5,000. I like to travel a lot, and I've traveled internationally a lot since my husband passed away. So, but I don't even carry that kind of cash when I travel because I use my card. So, yeah.
And so it sounds like he was directing you to go to different branches of your same bank. Would that be to avoid too much suspicion that you were going to the same branch and withdrawing lots and lots of money? Is that the reason he told you to go to different branches?
No, it's because the banks won't give you more than that. They simply won't, unless it would go over extended numbers of days, I think. Okay. I don't know. I didn't try that because he had more of a sense of urgency about it. and just
Mhm.
keep going, keep going. I
And,
have,
and this whole idea that he said you needed to withdraw the money, is it because he was saying that you needed to prove that the money that you have was not as a result of money laundering? Is that basically it?
right.
Okay.
It wasn't part of a money laundering scheme. It was mine. I had access to it, and I could
So
prove that.
tell me about the first time you went in to withdraw a large amount of cash to one of the branches. What kind of conversation did you have there?
Um, it was a young gentleman at the counter, and I think I initially maybe asked for 20,000, and he said, "Well, 10,000 is our limit," and that's about all. I mean, he was the first one, and I got my 10,000 in cash there.
So he didn't
Uh,
ask you why you needed it?
I don't remember who the first one was to ask me that.
Okay. But at
Probably
some
did.
point,
He probably did.
okay. But did you tell, at least to some of the branches, did you tell your story that I needed it for a bathroom
Oh, oh,
renovation?
oh yes, yeah. Because after late in the day, they were looking back on my withdrawals from the day, and I think they were starting to get suspicious. And sure, they brought it to my attention. We are just concerned about your safety, and we want to make sure that this isn't a scam. And I said, no, it's not. I didn't believe that it was. So they tried to forewarn me, but then that gets worse because my bank, at the end of the day, they were refusing to give me any more cash. They offered to give me a cashier's check, but Officer Edwards would not accept a cashier's check. I think it's too easily traced, maybe. Uh,
Yes.
so I did get a call probably several days later from a fraud detection office with my bank. And this lady expressed her concern, said, "This looks like fraud activity, and we're concerned for your safety." And she started asking me, what did I want to do with the money? And I told her the same story. And she started asking more and more questions like, well, who's your contractor? Did you get a bid? How many bids did you get? And what's the name of the contractor? And most contractors will take a debit card or a credit card or a check. They don't ask you for cash. Well, I don't think that's necessarily true nowadays. There's plenty of contractors out there that want cash. So she started asking one too many questions, and I was like backed into the corner. I felt trapped, and I just finally said, "I can't answer any more questions. I just can't." And she said, "Well, then, okay, we'll close your account. You can come get the rest of your money. We'll issue a cashier's check to you, and you can go find yourself another bank."
And did you?
Yes, yes,
And so did you deposit that cashier's check into another bank?
yes,
And did
I
you
did.
withdraw money? Did you withdraw money from that second bank?
Um, at that point, I think it was there wasn't a lot at that point, I don't think,
Okay.
because in the meantime, the uh, FTC officer, pseudo, scheduled a cash pickup at my home. And he told me there would be an undercover FBI agent would come to my house to pick up the cash. And so at that point, I gave them $30,000 in cash.
And so was it just one gentleman came to your house?
Yes, but he
Did he
was
come in? Did he come inside or did he just stand on the doorstep?
he actually didn't get out of the car. He pulled up to the curb, and the scammer was on the phone with me describing the car. And he had me send a picture of myself and the package. It was all carefully orchestrated. how I had to package the money. And when the car came up, he described the car. He would ask me, "What's the car look like?" And he'd say, "Yes, that's it." And they will be rolling down the back window on the passenger side of the car. Just place your package in the back seat. And no words were exchanged. They just drove off. But
Now,
he was on the phone with me the whole time.
do you have a Ring doorbell video camera?
I don't, but I
Do any of
did.
your neighbors? Do any of your neighbors have it?
Yes, but I found actually in my research that the Ring doorbells didn't help because it won't, at least in my case, it would not pick up activity that far away. It would not activate the camera. They'd have to come to the door to activate the camera. And then they would have gotten, you could see the street and the car if the camera was activated, but it wasn't in my case. I did find 2 neighbors that had actual cameras on their houses, and I was able to retrieve and identify the car for the FBI, but they were unable to get any plates from it.
Oh, what a shame. Okay.
Yes.
Was that the only time that you received somebody that you gave money or something else to, or did you get other visits?
I had 2 other visits.
Tell me about those. What did you hand over in those 2 visits?
Well, at that point, after I went through a bit of Bitcoin and a few other things, debit cards or prepaid credit cards, he had me purchasing gold. He knew where I lived. He said, "Well, there's a gold store not far from you. Are you familiar with the Parkway?" And I said, "Yes." And so I went to the store and bought gold coins with the money I had at that point. And then, so they sent another car to the house in July that picked up a delivery of gold coins.
Was it the same instruction? Go outside, put it through the rear window?
Right, right. And, I had to send pictures of the package. In one instance, he said, "That's not sealed properly. You can see through the seal." And I said, "Well, he said, "It's not well sealed." And I said, "Well, it is because I have transparent tape." So that's what I had. So he said, "Oh, okay." But he looked at that package and then I dropped it in the back seat of the car.
And what
Then
about the third? What about the third visit? What was that
the
for?
third visit was once I had hit my annuities, my retirement savings, and I purchased gold bars at that point. And so the last pickup was on August 2nd. And that was when he said, on Saturday night, any remaining balances would be locked down in my account. So on Friday morning, I was to take out 2,000 in cash, leave a small balance in any accounts, and maybe do some transfers to pay off car payments or something. And then Saturday night, my accounts would be locked down, and he was setting up a meeting on Monday night for me to meet with the 3 gentlemen who would return everything. But he said, "Take out 2,000 in cash, make sure you have enough to tide you over for groceries, gas, or any expenses that might come up, because it'll take some time to get the cashier's check or the certified check, and for you to deposit it and process it through your bank." So that was August 2nd was when the last pickup and the thing was over. I didn't hear from him on Saturday or Sunday. And
How much were the gold bars did you pay for?
Probably around 270,000. I'd have to look at my notes on that.
How did you pay for them?
With credit cards. No, I had the money because I had taken everything out of my annuities and put them into my new checking account. So they took a check for them. They took a check.
Did anybody at the gold bar merchant question you as to why you were buying so much gold bars?
No, in fact, I went back to talk to him after it was over and told him what had happened. And I said, was there anything that I did or said or any behavior that might have tipped you off that I was in trouble? And he said, no, not at all. He said, you seem perfectly calm and interested in doing business. And he said, the only thing was, there was a point in time where I went to buy the gold bars, and he said, well, that's not a wise purchase, because you won't get the same amount of money back as you invest in gold bars. And he said, I would advise you to buy more of the coins and smaller amounts. And I said, well, I don't know. I said, let me check with my financial advisor. Well, of course, at that point, the officer had been telling me, we want as few pieces of gold as possible to deal with, because we have to document it and prove it. And he said, so fewer numbers is better. And he said, no, buy the bars. And the gold dealer, after I went back to visit him later, he said, that's the only time I got suspicious. He said, I even told my boss, if that was my financial advisor telling me to buy gold bars instead of coins, I would have fired him. So,
Right. So you then, again, the same thing, you delivered these gold bars through the back window of a car that arrived?
yes.
It's a strange question, but are $270,000 worth of gold bars, are they heavy?
Not not not
No?
extremely. I mean, they're
Okay.
heavy, but not extremely.
Okay. You were
I
able to
didn't have
carry
any
them out to
trouble
the.
carrying them. Yeah, I didn't have any
Okay.
trouble carrying them.
Right. Mary Ellen, you mentioned just briefly earlier that there was also, you delved into cryptocurrency. Tell us a little bit about how that worked out.
You know, it was cash. I guess
Hmm.
before the scheduled cash pickup. I had cash in hand, and he told me again, I believe there's a government certified ATM and a gas station several blocks from your home. And go there and I will walk you through how to purchase Bitcoin. Because I said I had no idea where or how to buy Bitcoin. So he walked me through screen by screen. What do you see on the screen now? And now do you see blah, blah? I mean, sometimes he was telling me what would appear,
So,
sometimes telling
you're
him.
you're standing in front of this, what looks like an ATM machine in a gas station. Is that correct?
Right.
And he's on the phone with you,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Did you have AirPods like I've got in this, or you just listening on the speaker?
Not on the speaker. I had the phone to my ear.
Go to your ear. So you, with one hand, you're feeding in. Are they $100 bills?
Don't remember. It was
Okay,
around, I think it was around 7,000 in cash. So it must have been a
it
lot of
must have been.
$100 bills. Yeah.
I was going. It wouldn't be $10 because it would take you forever to feed that in, wouldn't you?
Right. Right.
Okay, so if it's $100 bills, you're feeding them into the machine. Did you have a QR code on that he had sent you on on your phone
I
to
don't
show
know.
up to the camera?
Probably.
Okay.
I know I had to do different things with my phone, and in the end had to insert my phone into a little cubby on the machine.
Okay.
So that might have been
That's
a
that
QR
sounds like
code.
the QR code, right? And
Okay.
that opens up what is called a wallet, which is
Oh,
basically the suspect's account. Okay.
ah,
I'm assuming you'd never used a Bitcoin ATM machine before, had you?
no, no. So I
What
mean, I was just a robot following the steps at that point.
was anybody else around you? Did anyone ever come up to you while you were there operating to ask
No,
what you were doing?
nope,
Okay.
not at all.
All right. So you had Bitcoin, you had gold bars, you had gold coins. Tell us about any gift cards that you were told to buy as well. Where did you get those from?
I bought some from Walmart, and then I went to a CVS pharmacy and purchased more. I think Target gift cards there.
Okay.
But he had me open them all up and photograph them and send him photographs. And I'm sure it was to get all the numbers, and I'm sure that money was gone in no time.
Right.
And I mean, I even remember saying to him, "This is crazy. What are we doing here?" And he would just reassure me, "Well, you know, this happens to other people all the time, and I've taken care of many of them, and it all comes out in the end. You just have to be patient, and you'll get it all back." So
I think at one point you had indicated in an email that you and I exchanged
mhm,
that he built trust with you by
yes,
making sure that dental bills were paid. Can you tell us about that?
yes, I had a couple of things that I was needing large expenditures for. I had taken out a short-term, no interest loan of $10,000 to pay for extensive dental work that I had done last year. And I said, my payment is due. This was probably in July. And I said, because I'd made the June payment in July, I said, I don't want to miss this payment. I've got to have, the sixth of the loan. Because I'm going to get socked with 20% interest if I don't make my payments on time. And he said, "Oh, sure, sure, sure. He said, go ahead." I think by this time I had pulled money out of some account somewhere. That he said, "Oh, sure, sure. Go ahead and pay it all off if you want. And then you can quit worrying about it." So I know I paid off the $10,000 loan in one fell swoop. In the midst of all of this, I had a trip planned to Normandy in July. And I said, I need to pay for the balance of the Normandy trip. And he said, "Sure, go ahead, take care of that. You don't want to miss your trip." And then I said, "Well, as a matter of fact, I'm concerned about my passport. Am I going to be able to get out of the country, or am I going to be stopped at the border? Or better yet, am I going to be able to get back home again?" He said, "I'm glad you mentioned that." He said, "I'll check into it." And several days later, he said, "Absolutely no problems. No one will question you at the border. I've taken care of it, and you will not have any trouble leaving or coming back home."
So the fact that he was encouraging you to pay off your debt and to pay money towards a trip, did that
I,
give you confidence in his credibility?
it it made me feel comfortable that he had my best interest at heart.
Okay.
Because I had another trip planned in September. I went on safari in Kenya for a couple of weeks. And when that payment came due, he said, "Oh, yes, go right ahead. Get that taken care of. You don't want to miss that."
Mm.
So let me see what else.
Well, while you're thinking of that through,
Yeah,
I want to ask you about one. When did you first realize? He talked about that on the Monday, I think it was, after your last gold bar deposit, that you would get a visit from three men. Obviously, that never occurred, did it?
right, right.
Is that when you decided to think this may not be legitimate?
I actually started getting nervous before then. And I can say probably there was something in the back of my mind even before that. Um, when I got the gold bars, I kept thinking, I just hope and pray I'm doing the right thing. Um, because that was a lot. um, so that he talked with me every day, several times a day, all summer. The only time he didn't was when I was out of the country. And
Hmm.
so I was accustomed, he knew my schedule every day. He knew where I was pretty much at all times, and spent a greater part of some days on the phone with me.
Hmm.
Um, so
Did you ever,
that
while you were on your
Saturday,
trip,
I'm
okay,
sorry.
I was going to say, before you get to Saturday, when you were on your trip to Normandy, for example, you're out of the country, you're with a group of strangers. Did you ever feel tempted to share your story as to what was happening to you with anybody?
No, no.
Why
Uh,
not?
I guess because I was sworn to secrecy. And
Hmm.
I did have an incident one day. he was with me on the phone. I was sitting on my couch, and he said, I need to put you on hold for a moment. And so, can you hold for a minute while I speak with the higher authorities? And I said, sure. And my dog was sitting in my lap or next to me on the couch. And I started talking to my dog and petting her. And he was back on the phone in a split second saying, who's there with you? Who are you talking to? Have you shared this with anyone? I told you not to tell, or we'll have to pursue arrest warrants, and we will have to take your case public, and you'll have to find your attorney. So he threatened me anytime there might have been an opportunity. Not when I was out of the country. If anything, I would never have thought of telling anyone else. If anything, I had thought about calling a nephew. Of all things, he happens to be a retired FBI agent. And there were times that I thought about it. And then I kept thinking, no, I agreed not to tell. I don't want to screw up this case that they're working. And I mean, there were a lot of things that he did to keep me in the loop. He said they had arrested someone in Texas. He knew I had rented a car in Texas a year ago, and said now someone had taken out that same car in my name, and they had taken off with it, and the car was gone. So, I mean, there were a lot of things he kept telling me all summer long.
You know, Marian, in the last few minutes we have, I want to go to a couple of things. The first one is obviously when you were going to mention about that Saturday and that Monday when you realized this was a scam and the steps you took to report it.
I actually didn't do anything until Monday night because I wasn't sure until they didn't show on Monday, and I called my nephew right away.
Okay. The retired FBI agent.
Right. And then he put me in touch with some of his colleagues from the Louisville FBI office where he worked.
I see.
Yes.
Can I also ask you about the tax implications that evolve from you spending all this money?
Well, from what I understand, the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act eliminated fraud and theft, actually, I think, eliminated it from protection in the tax laws and the tax codes. So I will have to pay taxes on all the money that they took, which amounted to close to $400,000. So I've estimated just through a tax app that I'm going to owe around $100,000.
Wow. Wow. And am I right in thinking that there may be somebody out there who's trying to propose legislation that would protect victims like you from having to make these payments?
Yes, absolutely. Senator Raskins is trying to introduce a new law, and I think it's a Senator McGovern that's with him on that. They are trying to introduce something into Congress this session, and I know ARP does a good job of keeping their thumb on what's going on in Congress as it impacts seniors.
Right. How did AARP get to hear your story? How is it that you got connected with AARP Fraud Watch Network?
Well, I got some articles from, I don't remember who gave them to me, but I found articles from the Washington Post, and there is an author there that has done a series of 7 articles on fraud.
Yes.
And my brother, who's on the call, had immediately sent me an article from the New York Times that was published on July 31st that pretty much told the same story as what I had experienced. And so I knew I wasn't alone. But the articles in the Washington Post led me to ARP. I think they know the woman well that was written in those articles. That was written, her story was told, and they told different aspects of it. So they did one article on the tax implications, and they had lots of information about ARP and their fraud watch network. So I jumped in line with them as soon as I could.
Fantastic. Okay. While we wait for hopefully one or two people to put questions in the Q&A box for you, I'd like to ask you, Mary Ellen, if you had the opportunity to be at a conference with a whole bunch of bankers
Yes.
and financial brokers and financial advisors, what would you say to them based upon what you have now learned about, from your experience?
Well, their approach is to ask you what you're going to do with the money. And I felt cornered. I felt trapped. It didn't help me at all. I think, and knowing that someone's on the phone potentially listening to all of your conversations in the bank, I think they just need to say, if they recognize something that they are concerned about, they need to have a brochure or a one pager, something simple and clear that they can hand to the customer and say, please read this, or put it at the top, concern for your safety. If they would say, make real clear statements like you're told to keep quiet and cease all communication about it, it's a scam. If it's the government calling, the IRS, the FBI, the FTC, or Social Security, or the local police, and they're asking you for money or threatening you with arrest, then it's a scam. They're not going to do that over the phone. Don't trust caller ID in those instances either. If you are instructed to move money to protect it, it's a scam. And that's exactly what I was told. If you're asked to transfer money out of a bank account, any investments, retirement accounts, if you're told to purchase Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency, if you're told to buy gold or gift bars, those are scams. And I think if they just spell it out, if you're threatened with criminal prosecution, it's a scam. If you're told to lie, which I was, it's a scam. And then not to trust Google search for customer service numbers, because I was fed a bogus number, and that's actually where my rabbit hole started.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but if they would educate from that perspective, and they can maybe even flip it over and put the story, put my story, put the story from the Washington Post or the New York Times that are out there, repeat those stories, just put one of them on the back side so you can read what has happened to someone that indeed has been scammed. That's what I would tell them to do.
Excellent.
So much
Wow.
more helpful.
You just don't know how far this may be reaching to financial institutions. So thank you for sharing that.
I'm sure.
Mary Ellen, I've noticed during this conversation, a couple of times you welled up and you became emotional. Does it hurt for you to tell your story like this?
Usually I have a moment. In every talk I've given, I've had a moment where I just have to stop and catch my breath. I've even recently did a talk in Florida just a week ago, and I was telling one woman afterwards, when she was asking questions, I said, I keep thinking every time I do this, I'll get better at it and not well up. And she said, don't stop. She said, it makes it so much more real.
Well, it does. It really does. And before I hand over to Trudy, I want to let you know, Mary Ellen, you are extraordinary. And your story is powerful. It's got so many lessons. There is going to be a ripple effect. Already there has been. And I know, well, we don't know yet how far reaching this, but I want to thank you so much, because I've heard a lot of stories in my career, right? As I've been in the law for 47 years, but your story is especially impactful. Bless your
Thank
heart.
you.
So,
Thank you. Well, thank you for the work that you are doing.
oh, absolutely.
I
But
I do this because I want to make a difference. I want to save this from happening to someone else. And if I do, then that'll be my legacy.
oh,
And
I-
I just
good,
want to fight for change in Congress.
good, good for
So
you. Good for you. You are a fraud
you.
fighter indeed.
Thank you.
Trudy. Do we have any questions or comments from you?
I'm gonna start with the comments because I want Mary Ellen to know that our audience, several comments have been along the lines of, you are so brave for re-traumatizing yourself by telling your story to educate us. We can
Thank
be
you.
so incredibly manipulative with these criminals. And it's reminding all of us to tell someone you know
Yes.
if anything happens that you think is suspicious. Don't keep it inside. And
Right.
Mary Ellen, just from my own personal experience, when you pay something like this forward, when you let those emotions out, you gain a piece of yourself back every
Mhm.
time you do
Yeah.
that. So how are you doing emotionally? And do you know that AARP also has a support group online? Have you been
Yes.
part of that? Okay.
Yes. I have been participating in that. I do find that speaking, though may be difficult, it is healing for me to share the story. You know, you spread it out a little bit more, it gets smaller. um, so I appreciate all the avenues that are available. And my friends have been very supportive. There have been a few, and I know they're going to be naysayers. I know I've been called the dumb blonde behind my back. And I know I've encountered people at parties that have said behind my back, she should have known better. Well, of course, I've said that to myself many times already. Um, you know, I was when I first realized what had happened, of course, I hated myself. I was ready to kill myself, except I know I won't ever do that. Um, and you know, I called myself an idiot and stupid and everything else numerous times, but I have a dear friend who sends me a text every single day saying, "You're not a stupid idiot." And she hadn't missed a day since this came
And
out.
we have a program for that too, so that we don't blame the victim. You can
Yeah.
go to aarp.org/say this, and it has words of encouragement,
Oh,
to say, instead of, how could you do this? We don't
yeah.
blame someone who is, mugged on the street or robbed in the subway. We should not be blaming victims of fraud. They
Right.
were targeted by professional criminals.
Right. Right.
Exactly.
And I will say, you know, in my day-to-day life and day-to-day business, I'm doing fine, I think. You know, I have a good time, I have a life. So
Okay. And now you have me as a friend, Mary Ellen. You've got my email address and my phone number, so you can call me anytime.
okay.
That'll
Thank
always,
you.
always work. Mary Ellen,
Sure.
how
Okay.
long did this, one of our questions was, how long did this go on?
7 weeks.
7
Started
weeks.
on June 18th, and then the gold pickup was on August 2nd, and let's see, 3rd, 4th, the 5th is when they didn't show. And I didn't hear from the scammer anymore. That's when I called my nephew. I believe it was on the 5th that night. I thought, well, I've waited long enough. They're not here. And I think that was the night that I called him. And then, of course, called my family the next day.
And Paul, what would be the first steps? I know Mary Ellen had a relative that was in the FBI. If you don't have a relative that's in the FBI, what would be a targeted person's first step as far as the first phone calls to make when they
Right.
find that this is what's happened?
I would, and I've said this lot of times, I would start local with your local police department. Now, you will get pushback from your local police department. Many times they say, well, it's a scam that was operating probably overseas, so there's nothing we can do. And I want people to push back on that response because that's inappropriate. We want the police to gather the initial report, give you a crime incident report number so that you can then give that to your FBI field office. And hopefully between local and state and federal, they may just simply be able to put this together. You know, we have an elder justice task force in San Diego where local and FBI share information. And if they see common factors going on here, we can possibly convince the FBI to follow through. But it does sound like, Mary Ellen, the FBI did at least try to follow through with the Ring doorbell video
Oh,
cameras
sure.
and all that. So that was good. That was,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah.
And I'm confident they continue to work it. You know, I've asked for updates and they can neither confirm nor deny. So I figured if there's anything they can share with me, they will.
And I just want to tell you both one story from our local FBI office. We have an FBI agent who has drafted a letter which he's given to gold bar merchants in San Diego and is asking them to give that letter to prospective customers with the kind of information, Mary Ellen, that you want banks and credit unions to have at their disposal. So I think that is a proactive measure that FBI across the country should be taking. And I'm wondering, and this was a question that came in from John, would you be willing to share those tips that you gave us for banks that we could then pass on to AARP Bank Safe, who could then they could then use that in their trainings with banks?
Absolutely. I do need to check my source. I do think it might have been one of the newspaper articles that I saw, or maybe something on our, you know, I didn't dream all this up. It kind of all came together when I saw it somewhere, but I'll have to find, I would want to find the source to give credit.
That'd be great. Okay.
Yeah.
We are coming up to the top of the hour. Paul, did you have any last comments, or Mary Ellen, last comments before I close us out?
No. I
Mary
just want
Ellen,
to say thank you.
You were great.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay. Then on behalf of AARP Virginia, I want to thank both of our guests today for sharing their time, their knowledge, and their experiences with us. We'd love to get your feedback on our program. So in the chat box, there is a link to a survey. If you could take a moment to complete that for us, or that survey will be in the follow-up email that contains the recording. I did put in the chat that we did record today's program. A link will be sent via email with that recording. Please share that link with your parents, your family, your loved ones, your friends, anyone that you think might possibly be a potential target, because if you can spot a scam, you can stop a scam, and we need to stay one step ahead of the criminals. Our Tuesday Explorer program continues next week with extraordinary people doing extraordinary things and using art to be heard. So please join us next week. And until next Tuesday, we'll see you then. Have a great afternoon. Mary Ellen, thank you so much. Paul, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.
Our pleasure. Bye-bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.